For the ones like me who stare at a mirror all day, hoping to fix it with their eyes. I have broken my mirror. Please break yours. Damilare cuckoo. Only big bum bum matters tomorrow. Hi, Barbie. Listen, Barbie summer was so fun. Everything was so pink and colorful, and there was just bubblegum optimism in the air. Brat summer, even though I couldn't fully identify with it, I was like, wow, this is really cool, and it's very mysterious, and I like it. I don't know what our theme is this summer. All I know is that I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Like whatever aesthetic this is, 0 out of 10, would not recommend. Don't like it. Hi, my name is Maya. Welcome back to the Teaology Podcast. And we are talking about something very cutesy, very mindful, very demure, and that is beauty standards, okay? We're going to ask the age-old Disney question, what do you see when you look in the mirror? Do you see someone beautiful? Do you see someone who is made in the image of the everlasting God Heshe? Do you see something that needs correcting or cutting? Do you see something that needs to be stitched or sucked in? Do you see a masterpiece or do you see something flawed? And how do you even know that it's flawed? Who told you that? So today on the podcast, y'all, we're really holding up a mirror to beauty culture, beauty standards, body positivity, and what it really means to be in a body that is made in the image of God. We're going to be asking questions like, is beauty and body positivity actually empowering? How do faith and theology fit into those movements? We're going to ask the question if faith language and the idea of ritual have been co-opted to benefit the makeup marketing machine. And we're also going to ask the hard question if beauty has become an idol in not only our societal circles, but also our religious circles as well. Listen, beauty matters to not only Americans, but people around the world. 28 million Americans got Botox or fillers just last year alone, and that number has doubled, okay, in just a decade. And I don't know about you, but when I turned 30, the ads completely changed for me. I started getting all these Botox ads the minute that I turned 30, and I was like, first of all, what you trying to say to me? And second of all, I don't need that. I'm Black. But seriously, I noticed my ad pool completely changed based on what age I turned. And listen, we worried about Big Brother. Big Beauty do be watching the stuff that you look at. It looks at the trends, the things you're concerned about. It is listening to your insecurities. And women around the world are spending billions on surgery, dieting, and aesthetic maintenance, often chasing a beauty ideal that seems like it does not want to be caught. And this is quite the profitable business. So we're going to talk again about the intersection of beauty culture, body positivity, the theology of an Imago Dei, and how that fits into all of this, and ask if we're really loving and treating our bodies like God intended it, or are we dissatisfied with the maker and what he has done and feel like maybe we could just spruce it up with a little makeover. If this is your first time here, hi, my name is Maya. Welcome to the Teaology Podcast. Here we have conversations at the intersection of faith and culture. We talk about everything from beauty culture to purity culture to Christian nationalism. You can find all of those episodes and more, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or you're watching us here on YouTube. We're so happy you're here. If you're listening, would you just rate the show? And if you're watching, please like, subscribe, and again, share this episode with anybody that would like to come to the table. I'm so glad you're at the table today. Let's go ahead and dive in. So before we dive in today, I want to introduce a concept to us that was very central in my research and that I will most likely refer to quite often during the podcast. And that is something called the beauty myth. And it comes from this marked up library book, one of my points of research today. The beauty myth was written in 1990 by a woman named Naomi Wolf. And even though the book was written like 35 years ago, so much of the theory and the points in this book remain true. So let's see how Naomi Wolf defines the beauty myth. She says this: the beauty myth is always actually prescribing behavior and not appearance. It is, I believe, the most potent political weapon deployed against women. It is a form of social control, with images of female beauty growing ever more unattainable, and the pressure to conform increasing accordingly. The beauty myth tells women that their value lies in their physical appearance, that their bodies are projects to be perfected and managed. It demands perfection perfection, but guarantees failure because the standard it sets is impossible. This system not only exploits women's insecurities, but also distracts them from other struggles, political, economic, personal, thereby keeping them divided and distracted. So here Naomi's definition is very clear, y'all. The beauty myth is this narrative in our culture that a woman's biggest priority is being beautiful. Okay, and we're going to talk about why that's a little bit unaligned, because if you're a woman of faith, you're a woman of God, your biggest priority should be being holy as God is holy. Come on, somebody. We'll get to that. The biggest striving point here in a woman's life should be desirability. But the problem here is that what is desirable and what is beautiful is ever changing. Listen, I'm a 90s baby. I've seen us go from your collarbones are sexy to BBL culture, and it's a head rush, y'all. It's a head rush. So the beauty ideal and what is quote unquote desirable changes so much. And because it changes so much, a woman can never really reach the goal. She'll never really fit the glass slipper, if you will. Because this goal is constantly being strived for but never reached, women obsess over it. Women obsess over being desirable. And because that is the main goal and main obsession, they can't really engage in any other meaningful pursuits like economic or social equality, community, education. And I would go even so far to say that the beauty myth even distracts from the work of the gospel, because more and more biblical womanhood is being prescribed as an aesthetic and not a life laid down. So let me not go off too early, because we're gonna get there, trust me. But here Naomi Wolf's framing, beauty is a system of power, not just aesthetics. So let's go back a little bit, because you know I'm a what? Context girly, okay? Women's bodies have always been a point of contention, okay? Scriptures have been mismanaged for the subjugation of women for as long as we can remember, and women have been subjugated culturally as a whole. Women have been discounted, okay? Because of this subjugation, women were kind of forced to adapt quickly. When you're kind of refused a seat at the table, you try to figure out, how can I get there? And women learned very early on that beauty was a way to get a man to do what we wanted. Shout out to Delilah, but not really. She was anyway. The connection between beauty and currency became cemented in human theory. Also, throughout time, the beauty ideal has shifted from century to century, but beauty as currency has always been the thing. Women have used their beauty in a way to get ahead. Now, is that the right thing to do? That's another conversation, but we have to understand that that is a result of subjugation, a result of sin, and now there is an imbalance between men and women because of that. Beauty becomes the way that a woman gets herself to where she needs to get. It becomes currency. The way that women carry themselves is a way that they can get where they need to get. Now, because beauty becomes this currency and this commodity, it becomes linked to consumerism. And women are always, even today, and were always trying or buying something new to keep up with the beauty myth, keep up with the beauty ideal. When we're thinking about feminist theory, follow me, in our most recent feminist history, we have to understand this shift. So before the 60s, right, who was the ideal woman? The housewife, right? Before we have the second wave feminism, most women were at home. They were not working. Pre-World War II, they were at home. So the marketing was towards housewives. So there was a lot of advertisements geared towards that type of woman, right? After you have second wave feminism, after you have a shift in the labor market where more women are working, the housewife now becomes the corporate baddie, the secretary baddie, and the housewife becomes more of the girl boss type of shift, right? So because that is now the shift, the advertising changes. Now, I do want to say that the advertisements, whether it was to housewives or girl bosses, is definitely rooted to me in shame. So the advertisement for the housewife is like, you've got to get this or your kids will hate you. You've got to get this or your husband will think that you're ugly. You've got to get this or your house is a mess, right? And then on the opposite side with the girl boss, it's like, girl, you don't want to look a mess in the office, right? You want to look put together, right? You want that promotion, you got to get this, and this. So again, the advertisement, even though it's maybe trying to align itself and ally itself with a woman, it is based in shame, and it is rooted its advertisement language in shaming the consumer into getting the product. So I just want to keep that in the back of your mind because that's going to be important. Now, after second wave feminism, after the 60s movements, consumerism evolved, y'all. So I said earlier, housewife to girl boss, we have the same type of shame advertisement, same pressure, but it's new packaging. Okay, so the second wave feminism, it gained a lot of legal rights and some equality for women. Obviously, being able to work, owning a home, so many different doors were open for women, and the same kind of oppressive systems that kind of relied on women's subjugation had to be torn down. But again, the beauty myth is sinister because it comes behind that and it says, okay, we've got to find another way to subjugate and burden women. So now we have the shift from housewife to girl boss. Now we have the you can have it all type of advertisement. And it's impossible to have it all. I'm sorry, this is not Burger King. There's a limit. Humans have limits, humans have boundaries, and the have it all type of advertisement adds beauty to the list of impossible expectations that a woman is supposed to meet. And again, this is another instance of the goalpost moving, of the ideal being ever evolving and ever changing. So despite the social progress, the equal rights, education, careers, beauty still remains a tool of control and a way to subjugate and distract women and honestly shackle them to consumerism. Consumerism really keeps us bound as sisters, especially when we think about self-surveillance and chronic dissatisfaction with our bodies. The beauty myth keeps women separated and distracted and policing themselves, and it divides us while also being the only thing that we bond over. We get into a bathroom, we're like, girl, where's your makeup from? Where's that gloss from? Does anybody have so-and-so and so-and-so? So it is the thing that, we kind of are girls around is beauty, but it is also the thing that makes us jealous of each other, that makes us envy each other, that isolates us if we don't feel like we meet the standard. And instead of our bodies being something that we enjoy and reveling in our beauty, it becomes something to manage, to monetize, and to shrink us back. Now, because beauty is now considered currency and desirability is now really connected to worth, we now as women and men, I shout out to my brothers, I know y'all do this as well, but we now go to extreme lengths to be beautiful. Every little girl at some point in her life has been told that beauty is pain. I used to hear it all the time sitting in the salon while that creamy crack was in my head. God, we thank you for the deliverance, because I remember sitting in that chair and just trying to disassociate from the fact that my head was on fire. It was something like, now understanding like all the things that come with perms and relaxers is like, why was I even doing that? But again, this pervasive ideology that you have to endure suffering to be beautiful, it is really how we see the normalization of body augmentation and the ideal of the shifting perfect body. When I did a survey with my listeners, a lot of people said, well, when we say beauty is pain or beauty is sacrifice, there is an element, if you want your body to look a certain way, that you have to be disciplined. So if I want to lose 25 pounds, I've got to work out, I've got to eat right. That's cool. To me, I wouldn't even consider that sacrifice. I would consider that stewardship. What I'm talking about is enduring physical harm on your body or harming your body in order to be perceived as beautiful, whether that's plastic surgery, whether that's an eating disorder, whether that's taking supplements that we don't know, God knows where these things have come from. This pervasive ideology has put us in a position where we're willing to risk the health of our bodies in order to be beautiful. So, we see it all throughout our advertisements. We've got Botox advertisements, we've got BBL culture, we've got the hair transplants. We see so many advertisements for these types of products because these procedures and these ways of toxic augmentation have become more prevalent. We really have to start asking the question, And some of y'all might disagree with me, but we have to start asking the question, are women actually choosing to have these cosmetic procedures, or are they being coerced by the media, marketing, and culture? Because a lot of times the conversation around plastic surgery is like, it's your body, do what you want to do. If you're unhappy with it, like, you have the right to change it. And that does kind of sound like feminist language. Like, it sounds very my body, my choice, go girl, do your thing. You know what I'm saying? And surgery and body augmentation is being marketed in a very like empowering way. Like, you deserve to be happy with your body. You can fix it. It sounds good. Like, it's very much feminist liberation, girl boss language right now. But I feel like it's a pink dog whistle, if I'm being honest, because we have to ask ourselves, if you're unhappy about something on your body, what made you unhappy about that? Like, who told you that that was a flaw? Like, who told you that that was something that needed to be fixed? Is it because you've truly been unhappy with it, or is it because of a shifting beauty standard? Are you comparing yourself to another woman? And here's the thing, the more normalized these surgeries have become, the less and less that we're seeing real bodies. This is why comparison and envy and jealousy is really a hell of a drug, because we're not even really trying to become like another real person. We're becoming less and less discerning of what a real body looks like. The more we try to adjust ourselves to bodies that have been augmented, we feel more obligated to try to modify our bodies. And let me just go ahead and free somebody real quick. Bodies are supposed to change. They're supposed to stretch and shrink and have bumps and bruises and marks and imperfections. They are bodies. They're bodies. You're a real person. You're not a mannequin. You're a real person. We're really chasing a constantly moving target. There are so many women who are removing their implants now because we're kind of returning back to skinny chic. We were in our curvy era for a while, and now everybody's going back to the skinny chic look. We see that the goalpost is constantly being moved. Unfortunately, with this beauty is pain ideology, we've normalized suffering as empowerment, and parts of ourselves that we admire today with pleasure, next year, based on the beauty trends, we may reclassify those as deformities. And here's the thing, y'all, the cosmetic industry, it thrives off the fact that you hate yourself. It thrives off the fact that you're dissatisfied with your body. This kind of entrepreneurial beauty culture, link in bio, scroll down to the caption for more. This type of culture, it markets surgeries and products as empowerment. I had a whole episode about wellness culture, and I really came for MLMs because that's what we're talking about, mimicking sisterhood and everything in order to really shackle women to consumerism. It's just another way to sell shame. In 2022, Americans spent over $11.8 billion on aesthetic procedures. They are making bank off the fact that you don't like yourself. Someone is making money off the fact that you hate your body. And this co-opting of, kind of feminist liberation language, the my body, my choice, body augmentation and plastic surgery, and even disordered eating habits being framed as liberation, but it's really coercion. It's coercion. And they have no problem with you going along with the stuff that they're selling because they're finna make some money. We have to really ask ourselves, is it really freedom or just new packaging for the same oppression? Because again, if you're obsessed with constantly keeping up with the beauty ideal, what else are you doing? How are you contributing to the communities around you? How can you keep up to date with women's rights and what's going on in our political, socioeconomic sphere if you're constantly trying to keep up with what is beautiful and desirable? We are so apathetic and numb to the violence that women go underneath. Like, I don't think we even understand like the risks that women take when they go under the knife. We don't understand how many young women and girls are dying because of disordered eating. I think we just kind of trivialize the violence that beauty standards inflict because we're like, oh, well, women chose to do it. She chose to do it. Women are dying on these tables. couples, y'all, that like they're losing their lives. Children are losing their mothers. Sisters are losing their sisters. Mothers are losing their daughters. And the industry does not want us to just be content with our bodies. I'm not talking about taking care of our bodies. I'm not talking about stewardship. I'm talking about the internet does not want, and the industry does not want you to be content with who you are and to love your body in all its stages, because the more satisfied you are, the less you're going to spend, the less material you are. I just alluded to wellness culture, and I have an entire episode about wellness culture that you can go back and dive into the whole dieting, clean living type of thing, and how these things are framed in language of moralism and religiosity. But specifically, I want to talk about something that is very prevalent in beauty and wellness culture, which is something called internalized self-surveillance. Internalized self-surveillance. So what does that mean? Self-surveillance refers to the practice of basically closely monitoring your behavior, thoughts, and surroundings, often to gain a better understanding of yourself or make improvement in your life. And it involves consciously paying attention to one's actions and habits, and it can be facilitated through a number of ways. Self-surveillance to a point is good because we should be self-aware. We should be aware of the ways in which we are conducting ourselves. We should be aware of our bodies, our emotions, things like that. But specifically when it comes to beauty and wellness culture, self-surveillance can really be a source of anxiety because people become overly concerned with the performance of beauty and desirability and how they are perceived by others. So what that might look like is just being obsessed with going to bed pretty. Like, have you seen the TikTok videos? Like, I gotta make sure that I look good going to sleep. Babe, nobody is gonna see you. The only reason that we see you is because you set up this camera. Like, it's okay. Like, feeling like you have to be beautiful at every stage of your life. I saw a video of a girl who was in labor and she was almost about to push, but she felt like she's like, I can't be ugly in my birthing video. Ma'am, a human is about to come out of your hoo-ha. Nobody cares. But you see how in some cases self-surveillance can be very obsessive, and it can lead to obsessive behaviors and a fixation on constantly improving yourself. Focusing too much on self-monitoring can really lead you to a disconnection of who you really are, because you're not really trying to figure out, is this really me? You're just chasing the next thing. So I mentioned it before, but how I see it arising in our culture today is this constant obsession of how you're being perceived. Like, Gen Z is like, oh, I don't want to seem cringe. I don't want to seem da-da-da-da. Instead of just being who you are. Like, this constant negative self-talk, which is usually very toxic and shameful and degrading, because you're most likely shaming yourself into being perceived desirable and beautiful instead of actually doing the work of liking yourself and liking who you are. It's very troubling because I also think that sometimes self-surveillance tries to be almost like this pseudo Holy Spirit. It's like this internalized voice that we're yielding to. But the problem is that that voice is usually not godly. It's usually not holy. It's not gentle. And that self-surveillant voice is usually leading us to a maddening obsession and forcing our hand into material consumption. The self-surveillance, or this kind of internalized beauty police, starts to feel like the Holy Spirit telling you how to dress and eat and move and measure yourself. It's just not healthy long term, because it doesn't lead to a spirit of rest. It doesn't lead to a spirit of stillness. I know, and the Bible tells me so, that God has not given me a spirit of fear, but of a sound mind. Come on, somebody. One of the things that we have to understand is that specifically when it comes to self-surveillance, the ways that we've taught about modesty, because some of them have been misogynistic in nature, there is a lot of language, shame language, when it comes to how women think about their bodies. And there is this almost performance that is required of some Christian women. And because of the ways that we have bent the knee to misogyny in church culture, it has made women very, very vulnerable to beauty myths, beauty culture, and self-surveillance. So much of how the text has been taught, it really looms over how we think about our bodies and what we think we deserve. And instead of modesty being taught around the idea of your body being beautiful, but it not being the only good thing about you. When we've taught about specifically biblical womanhood and biblical femininity in the lens of it being reduced to performance, a lot of our teaching has not been taught and rooted in dignity. So now that you have this toxic self-surveillance culture running parallel with a lot of the religious shame that some of us still have, these two ideologies kind of running laps in your head, and then that's constantly on a loop. So then where's your hand? Right over that add to cart button. See how that shackles you there? And now the beauty machine can use that same spiritualized language and sell you beauty products as some type of holy ritual. It can prescribe wellness for you as though it's righteousness or piety. Whole time, Holy Spirit is like, you're actually fearfully and wonderfully made. Salvation is free. I won't charge you shipping. Matter of fact, I'll come to you because Jesus said I would come after he left, and I'll be with you all the days of your life. Actually, you don't need that to feel good. Even though when it comes to the idea of modesty, right, so much of that concept has to do with materialism. Modesty, as described in the Bible, is not just about clothing, but it encompasses an attitude of humility and self-control. Did you hear that? Self-control. Some of y'all need to look at the total in that cart and ask yourself, am I using self-control? Because some of us truly need deliverance. Modesty is about adorning oneself with good works and a gentle and quiet spirit, rather than focusing on outward appearance and expensive clothing. Why? Because 1 Peter says that an imperishable spirit is pleasing to God, meaning that the clothes will go out of style, the jewelry will tarnish, but the word of the Lord will stand forever. Come on, somebody. He sees past all the ice, the fluff, the smoke, and he sees you. The question you have to ask is if he's pleased. But like I said before at the beginning of the episode, biblical womanhood is being sold to you as an aesthetic, and it's linking you and shackling you to consumerism, where you feel like all you have to do is buy these type of clothes and dress this certain way, and that makes you a biblical woman. Whole time, God needs to prune you and shape you and mold you. And you cannot buy that. You cannot buy that. But advertisers have no problem with you thinking that you can buy your way to heaven or dress your way to the pearly gates. I'm trying to free you today. And I think that sometimes even in our pursuit to have this kind of Christian girl aesthetic, you need to really think about the fact that you're having to buy something. You're having to wear something. You have to have things to fit a perception instead of walking in the embodiment of what God has done for you. Jesus just wants you to abide in him, and the fruit will bear. You will not have to buy it. Come on, somebody. And the ties to consumerism, y'all, and constantly storing up things here on this earth, whether they're used to make us feel beautiful or worthy, the Bible is very clear already on storing up things. Matthew 6, therefore I tell you, don't worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Isn't life more than food and the body more than clothing? Why do you worry about clothes? Observe how the wildflowers of the field grow. They don't labor or spin thread, yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was adorned like one of these. If that's how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and thrown in the furnace tomorrow, won't he do much more for you? Luke 12 again, for life is more than food and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens. They don't sow or reap. They don't have a storeroom or a barn, yet God feeds them. Aren't you worth much more than the birds? Consider how the wildflowers grow. They don't labor or spin thread, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in his splendor was adorned like one of these. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Make money bags for yourselves that don't grow old, and inexhaustible treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Listen, y'all, the beauty myth, it makes us greedy. It makes us anxious, worrisome, and our hearts are literally troubled by it. God does not want this for us. So the beauty myth, y'all, is truly exhausting us. I think that's very clear. The beauty myth, like I've said before, profits off of low self-esteem, and the myth creates, because of the self-surveillance, a self-loathing, an internalized self-loathing, and a numbness to the ways in which you may be harming your body, not stewarding your body, harming your body to fit the idealized beauty standard. And we've become overly vigilant, always watching ourselves and each other to see how we measure up. And the myth has made us exhausted and really disconnected us from our real selves. From a very young age, this is the case. Girls are robbed of their childhood because of early body awareness. They can't just be kids. They have to already be managing and worrying about whether they look feminine, whether they're acting like girls, whether they're being girly, whether they're being pretty. Specifically when it comes to diet culture, dieting is a new version of domestic labor. It's how we measure success now. And really, when it comes to beauty, now we're really seeing the connection spiritually between beauty and spirituality, is that if a woman is being beautiful, somehow we perceive that as her being a good person or her being, dare I say, obedient. But we really ignore the fact that beauty really has nothing to do with someone's merit, okay? Because someone can look great. Even the enemy disguises himself as an angel of light, and he's still going to hell. Okay, so internally we have the struggle, but externally we have a collective social toll, because the beauty myth creates competition. It makes women compete and sometimes even hate one another, instead of bonding over the fact that we're both women, we're both trying to work this thing out, we're both trying to prevail. And it kills sisterhood, encourages self-policing and comparison. It almost even alludes to some of the legalism, specifically around ideas of modesty, women tearing down, either literally devouring one another because of the ways that we feel like a sister is being modest or immodest. And even when we're thinking about body positivity, right? The beginnings of the body positive movement, I think, were very positive, because it was like trying to show different body types. Specifically in the Black hair care world, there was a big emphasis on natural hair textures. But even then, it became about aesthetics, because there were certain hair textures that weren't shown. Certain bodies still were not acceptable. And even with the inclusivity, there's still a very, very subtle beauty standard, and there's still a moving target, even if there is a little bit more inclusivity. This idea of the beauty myth, y'all, it keeps women, like I said before, from showing up fully, from even in a spiritual lens, really investigating and loving who God said they are. And it keeps us from experiencing that fullness, both mentally, physically, and spiritually. I want to specifically talk more about the self-critical gaze and where we get a lot of our ideas about beauty and desirability. And a lot of that comes from pornography or overtly sexualized media. Y'all got to follow me here, because I'm about to really draw some lines here, but I need you to fix with me. There is physical harm being done to women because of the beauty myth. Pornography and overtly sexualized media, and I don't even think we understand how sexual our media is. Like America, we are really the poster board for sex sells, because I don't think we understand how overtly sexual some of our media is. But even in the ways that some of our media is, it teaches women to associate violence with desirability. Even when we think about certain love stories, the fact that a man is animalistic towards you or is obsessed with you, that abuse is seen as a marker of love and desirability. And when we think about the pornography industry and the ways in which women are marketed in that industry, it creates a self-critical sexual gaze, and it infiltrates how we see ourselves, our relationships, our expectations. And we have to understand, again, like I said at the beginning, that because of body augmentation, we are less and less perceptive to real bodies. We think, oh, she looks natural. No, babe, actually she has on a good bit of makeup. Oh, she has a natural body. Actually, no. And we're less and less used to that because these images of women who are in the pornography industry, not trying to bash those women because I know there's a story there as well, but the pornography industry really sells this, again, unattainable image of beauty, and it feeds into the beauty weight loss industry. They're two sides of the same coin, and they create demand through insecurity. There's a link between these two industries because both reduce women to body parts and feed off insecurity. Even though we can, again, still try to sell some of these industries, whether it's the pornography industry, whether it's weight loss, whether it's dieting, whether it's wellness, we still are trying to sell it as empowerment. This, what I like to call stylized objectification, and what Naomi calls stylized objectification, it looks aesthetically beautiful, but it's still abuse. It's still violence. And even though we may perceive some of these women in pornography industries and beauty industries as being liberated because she has a lot of money, there is a lot of suffering that still happens behind the scenes, and women who escape those industries will tell you that. We romanticize pain. It goes back to that ideal from before, beauty is pain, and we call it power. And because we have linked violence and abuse with love and desirability, it primes women to tolerate harm by their partners, by the marketing industry, when things are presented in music and media and beauty culture as suffering or harm, we see it as sexy. And we have to understand that the empowerment aesthetic often mimics abuse and subjugation. The one thing that the beauty myth is still trying to lord over women. This, again, primes women for unhealthy relationships with themselves. Again, that self-critical, self-surveilling voice is going to become more shameful. It primes you to be in relationship with partners who shame your body, and it also makes you more susceptible to marketing that is rooted in shame. So we now have this ideology of beauty and pain and desirability, and it makes us excellent consumers for a market that is trying to sell us things that will possibly harm us in order for us to be beautiful. Because let's make something very clear. When you go under that knife, when you engage in disordered eating, you are risking death. Like, this is not just some passing thing. I think we're becoming more like desensitized to the risks that we are going under for things like this. You could die, and women have died, and they're continuing to die because of this. This desirability and this ever-changing goalpost is killing women. Beauty myths trivialize pain, and desirability thinking, it keeps women shackled. So how do we combat this? How do we get out of this loop, right? We have to begin by grounding ourselves in this truth. We are made in the image of the Imago Dei. We are made in the image of God. In our culture, there's another image constantly being lifted up, one that demands our time, our money, our energy, and one that tells us who is worthy and who is not. The beauty myth is the one that is the lie. And we have to understand that beauty, or more specifically desirability, has become an idol. It may be dressed up in our secular culture as this kind of girl bossification, body augmentation type of desire. In church circles, it may look like this modesty pursuit, but it's really rooted in envy and shame. But it's something many of us have been trained to chase after, to shape shift for, and to suffer for. And scripture is very clear about chasing empty things. I already talked to you from Matthew 6 and Luke 12, but listen to what Ecclesiastes says, chapter 2, verse 11. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless. Chasing after the wind, nothing was gained under the sun. Again, in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 4, and I saw that all toil and all achievement sprang from one person's envy of another. You better catch it. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. So much of our desirability conversation, if we're really honest with one another and honest with ourselves, it's rooted in envy and jealousy of another sister. Instead of you walking in your uniqueness and in the story that God is specifically writing for you, you are being consumed by envy of another person. You don't know what God has them walking through. You don't even know if they actually walking with God. You might be envious over a demon whole time. But what is happening here is you're chasing after the wind. You're chasing after beauty and approval. And how do we refocus that? How do we return to the truth of the Imago Dei? We have to reject consumerism. The Bible is clear that we are to be content. And what contentment looks like in the year of our 2025, where so many beauty myths are coming at us, is to reject this hierarchy of capitalism, consumerism, and colonialist beauty standards. And how do we do that practically, right? Well, one, we have to really reject jealousy and envy when it comes to our communities. James 3:16 says it like this: for when you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. Like I told you before, and like Ecclesiastes alluded to, so much of our desirability conversation is rooted in envy. Instead of us understanding the beauty that God specifically has given you. Women have always gathered around circles in kitchens, at mirrors. Like I said, there is a specific girliness to beauty, right? I'm not saying that any of those specific, because listen, I'm going to go to Glossier. I am going to do that. I am going to get a cute little outfit, right? But the sacredness in which we gather around beauty rituals, I wonder if we can uncouple that gathering or that ritual away from consumerism. Can we have gatherings that are sacred, that are communal with other women, but don't have to be centered on consumerism or superficiality? When it comes to church circles, we need to reclaim modesty. We need to really be intentional in the ways that we teach about that, not in a shame lens, but as an intention and as a rejection of vanity, so that we can focus on the work of the gospel and the work of the kingdom, not shaming and hiding ourselves out of fear, but choosing not to center vanity. I think what we really have to start creating, specifically in the church and even as a larger society when it comes to communities of women, is creating spaces where beauty is not the price of admission. You can come here because you're my sister and I love you. It has nothing to do with how you look or whether you match up to what I perceive as desirable. You have worth because God said so, and I want you here. Beauty as an idol takes up so much headspace. It distracts us from gospel work, from equality work, from justice, from sisterhood. We have to ask, how do we speak louder than the world when it comes to what our bodies mean? And even again, in the inclusive, maybe even body positive spaces, a lot of times it just means new products, new things to buy, new rules, new rituals. The bar is still shifting and you still have to buy something. And we just have to understand that that is still bondage. It may look different. The cuffs might be pretty and pink, but it's still bondage. And it's not freedom and it's not liberation. It's just better marketing. And I think we have to really ask the question of how can we create spaces, create rituals of gathering when it comes to sisterhood and when it comes to womanhood that don't center vanity and consumption, but center solidarity with one another and wholeness, just as you are, just as God created you. Because the beauty myth and beauty standards and this obsession with being desirable, it kills sisterhood and it replaces community with comparison in our secular communities, in our churches, in our movements. And we cannot thrive under these systems. We cannot thrive under competition and consumerism. It's not sustainable, not only for the earth, but just our souls in general. It's not sustainable. Y'all, we got to look at the text. Proverbs 14:30 says, a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy, what? Envy rots the bones. You worry about staying snatched? Stop being jealous of your sister. Stop trying to chase what somebody looks like in the media, on a TV, on an Instagram ad. You need to be content. Put your heart at peace and reject consumerism and striving, and walk in the God-ordained beauty that you already have. We have to understand how the beauty myth and beauty standards are disrupting our communities, and we need to love our sisters well. And that starts with not envying them. I've said it before, the beauty myth distracts us from our purpose, our power, from each other, from really seeing each other. Most deeply, it distracts us from the work that God wants to do through us here on this earth. And we have to really recenter our thinking. So I want to close with a couple of scripture meditations. And the first is Hebrews 13:5, and it says, "Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you." The beauty myth tells us that if you don't buy this, if you don't do this, you will not be desirable, and therefore you will be what? Alone. But we know the truth of the scriptures. God will never leave you nor forsake you. And there is no qualification other than accepting his son. There is nothing you need to buy. Like I said before, salvation is a free gift. Okay, and then again, Haggai chapter 1 verses 5-6 says this, "Now this is what the Lord Almighty says, give careful thought to your ways. You have planted much but harvested little. You eat but never have enough. You drink but never have your fill. You put on clothes but are not warm." This, I believe, really alludes to the ever changing aesthetic and ever changing perception, and how there is no satisfaction, because you're always going to have to be doing something else to keep up. And how, if we are not careful, this ideology of consumerism and envy is going to lead us to be completely dissatisfied. And we will get to the end of our life and to the end of our womanhood, and we won't have any gratitude because we weren't sitting still long enough to really be thankful. So I want to really encourage you to rethink what you believe about your body, about beauty. Really ask the Lord to illuminate the ways in which you may even have some disordered thinking, not only about yourself, but about your sister. Rethink what you buy. Think about the things that you're purchasing. Are they things that you really need? Or are you being coerced into believing that this thing will make you whole? And then rethinking what we praise. So often, and I have to reframe my brain even with my two daughters, the first thing we usually go to is physicality. Compliment your sisters deeper than that. Compliment their joy, their disposition, the God-given gifts and qualities that they have. It's okay to be like, girl, body is tea every now and then, because it is. However, let's really love our sisters deeply and really be mindful of the ways that we talk about them. Oh, that was a lot. Again, we could have gone a lot of different directions, but I think this is a good starting point for conversation. I hope that this conversation blessed you, challenged you. Thank you so much for sitting at the table with me today. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love if you could share it with someone who needs to hear that they are beautiful. And let's start the process of reclaiming the Imago Dei, reclaiming our bodies through faith, through solidarity, through community, and through the truth that we are worthy because God said so. All right, y'all. I love y'all so much. You look so good today, by the way. Bye, y'all. Hold up. I'm over here yapping away and my mic not even on. What the world, boy? Boy, what the world, boy? I got a little runny nose, y'all. You don't know what I know.